Sorry about that. So my name is Anthony D'Ambrosio. I'm the Houston ACE leader for Atlassian. I'm joined by Ben and Larry, who are my co-leaders. We have Ken from Atlassian, who will be presenting from Atlassian's perspective about the shared responsibility model around compliance and backup. We're also joined by Vincent from Mumo Systems. He'll be talking from a partner's perspective about Atlassian's shared responsibility model. And we have Daniel and Ben from ReWind, who have a solution to address a part of the shared responsibility model, the backup component, and their perspective and what their solution does for the Atlassian platform. So I'll let Ken kick it off.
All right, let me just share my screen here for a second and get my presentation up. So I just put together a few slides so that you don't have to stare at my face while I talk here, and feel free to interrupt me if there are urgent questions, but I think we also have time at the end for that. So I'm Ken Urban, a solutions engineering manager here at Atlassian, and in general, a government guru. So you'll probably see some government references out of me in the way I talk. I've spent over 20 years in IT, and 10 of that was actually in our federal government, building large-scale cloud systems on the Hadoop platform and running one of, if not the largest Atlassian stacks in the world. I'm also a commercial pilot and certified flight instructor, and I mention that only to prepare you for the fact that I will most likely use aviation references, or 20 of them today. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to just lead with that. If you've ever had a near-death experience, one of those moments where you realize that you were seconds away from death, I'm assuming many of you probably have. I know I've had quite a few, anything from a deer being hit by a deer in flight, this actually occurred in flight, to coming within 50 feet of another airplane at 3,000 feet in the air. These things make you think, especially this last one, right? It made me think that the FAA, it made me wish that the FAA was using Trello or JSM or some other modern tooling. Now you might ask, why? Well, because when I reported this to them, they couldn't find the data for 6 months. And despite me providing GPS tracks off of my electronics and everything, and when they did find the data, that's not me, by the way. So it wasn't even the right data. And so I'm sitting there talking to them, trying to get to the bottom of this so that we can, reach out to the other pilot involved. And I'm wishing, wow, I wish they'd have migrated to our, cloud platform, or even using our platform. And then it kind of occurred to me that, wait, it's not actually a migration. Cloud is a transformation in many ways. It's an opportunity for you to review the way you work and make that leap into the future, right? And as I think about that some more, I'm thinking, well, there are a lot of complicated pieces to this transformation, right? The way you work. But 20 plus years in IT have shown me that there are often some consistent mistakes and misunderstandings that I see between cloud providers, having been one in the past myself, and the customers. So like all of our peers, Atlassian provides a shared responsibility model. But what exactly does that mean? Well, think of it like a passenger plane. When you're getting on that passenger plane, you do that without knowing that it has been certified and it's safe. But behind the scenes, what you didn't see is there's a whole host of activity going on before you ever step foot on that plane. The manufacturer works with the FAA to test and certify the aircraft. The pilot and crew perform safety checks before each and every flight, and so on and so forth, right? Now, let's put that in terms of cloud. The manufacturer would be Atlassian. And one point is it would also be the third-party apps that you use. So remember, in our cloud, third-party applications hold data as well. So we go through an extensive certification process for our cloud to ensure that it's safe and secure, which will involve HIPAA, SOC 2, ISO 27001, name it, right? We've got a ton of them on our Trust website. And I'm quite proud to announce today that as of yesterday, we are now also on the FedRAMP place as in progress for FedRAMP Moderate. That will be a separate instance of the Atlassian, it'll be called the Atlassian Government Cloud, but it is there today, so it's a real thing. But that's just our cloud, right? The Atlassian cloud. So what about third-party apps from our marketplace? Remember, I mentioned they also have a certification process, but not all of them will meet these requirements, right? In fact, a great deal of them have only done the minimum required work, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not, some of these apps are built by one or two people, And I'm not disparaging the work they do in any way. Far from it. I think it's amazing, and I applaud them for the undertaking. We wouldn't be here where we are without them. But we do have to realize that when you're using an app like this, they may not have the resources to undertake an extensive compliance effort like HIPAA or FedRAMP. In fact, it might not even be appropriate for them to do so. The data that they hold on to, it may not actually warrant the work. Much like my son here in this plane, it might not be appropriate to do the same level of certification that a large plane would go through. So, in my airplane analogy here, what works for this plane might not work for a medical transport plane, right? So it's really up to you as the passenger stepping onto the cloud platform to figure out, is it appropriate for me, what you're doing to protect me? It's the same thing with aviation, right? If you're getting on a MAX 8, maybe you're a little bit nervous, right? That's totally fine. So that covers the manufacturer aspect, the infrastructure of cloud. But what about the crew in my analogy? Well, that's the admins, the security teams, etc. They're your crew. They're also responsible for ensuring that what we and our partners have built remains safe for you. They've got to, go do through the compliance checks and everything. Because you wouldn't want someone to come along and potentially install unsafe equipment into your airplane or your data center, right? Of course not. A bolt falling off at 30,000 feet can be disastrous. And the same is true for that rib spar that's damaged, and it's true for your data center apps, your cloud apps, and any application that you use in cloud. So I want to stress that it is crucial to do your due diligence, not just once either. I see that quite often for companies and government agencies, which will do a one-time review process and then assume everything is okay. It's not that. It has to be Atlassian's apps. It has to be, Jira, Confluence, everything that you use has to be your third-party applications, and it has to be an ongoing basis. That means security scans, pen tests, documentation reviews, whatever fits the risk acceptance model that you need to use, but you should have a model. Now, there's one other area that I want to touch on, and it's the heart of the subject that we're going to talk about today, and that is backups. Now, if you run in an infrastructure like the one pictured here, on data center, you're probably used to backups just happening for you. It's something that, there's a whole team in the mature environment like this, and please don't tell me if you're running under your desk, which I have seen. I've run into servers like that. I've unplugged a few of them without knowing that they were mission critical even. It happens. But if you're in this kind of environment like the one pictured here, you're probably thinking, well, backups, they just happen. I have a team that's dedicated to that. I point my system at an endpoint and voila, it's covered, right? If I need to restore, I have a process to initiate that. I can recover the files that I need. I can go all the way down to individual files if I have to. It's not the same in cloud. Now, I don't want to alarm you. Backups absolutely do happen in cloud, but they're not the same as what you're used to. So, as I said, we do backup cloud, and there's documentation about that on our help center, so I encourage you to look at that. But the backups that primarily exist today are for Atlassian's disaster recovery use. For, as I said, they're part of our disaster recovery plan. They're for catastrophic failure. They're going to be cloud-wide, right? So, I'm sure you saw the incident last year where there was issues where some customers lost sites. We restored from those backups, and whole sites were restored, right? They're not here to save you if you delete a Confluence page or an Jira issue or a board or something like that, right? Or if you corrupt some data by entering the wrong thing. I do want to acknowledge there is an EAP around an enhanced backup and restore capability, but again, it is mostly focused on the product level. And in this, and there's a link to it here, but in this particular case, it's your site, right? So it's an admin level function. And just like on your PC, though, we can't protect you from deleting an attachment, even with this, and then quote emptying the trash. I want you to think about this like, there are a lot of other clouds that we use in our daily lives, like say Google Drive. Once you empty the trash on the Google Drive, it's gone, right? You know that there's no way you can ask Google to recover that data. Even though I am 100% certain that Google has a backup strategy and a disaster recovery plan for Drive, there's no way they could afford to restore all of Drive just for a lost file, right? not any different here. Even with our EAP, if you delete, say, a comment on a ticket and it's not in the history for some reason, perhaps a bad example, let's use automation rule and let's pretend it was included in the backup. I highly doubt your sysadmins would want to restore the entire site for that single piece of data. It would have to be very critical data. As a former system admin, I'd probably raise my eyebrow and say, okay, who's losing their job for deleting that? This is why you must consider an end-to-end solution, and that solution, I can't stress this enough, I saw this so many times in IT, you have to test that solution, right? So it's the same as on-prem, right? It's still part of your responsibility, even though Atlassian takes over the part for the infrastructure piece. And an untested backup is just a bunch of random bits taking up storage space on your servers, right? So it could be useful, or it could contain corrupted garbage. We don't know until we use it. But I would encourage you not to be that person to find out during an emergency. So I'd say if there was one thing I could leave you with today, because I always like to come back to just one thing, is use this analogy to think of it this way for cloud. Atlassian builds the plane, the infrastructure that you run on, right? The system of work, and we certify it. How you fly it or operate it, totally up to you. So as we say in aviation, let's keep the shiny side up.
Yeah. Thank you, Ken. So Vincent will take the floor now.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Awesome. So good morning, well, it's not morning anymore. Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe you're in the West Coast, it's still morning. So good morning to you. So my name is Vincent Mutambuki. I'm a solutions partner from Momo Systems. And I wanted to kind of phrase this from the perspective of a solutions partner. Now, it is fundamental for us to understand the shared model because it's critical for your organization. And I'm going to talk about it in 4 different points, and then leave you with a little story about our experience in backup and why we decided to start partnering with companies like ReWind to make sure that as a solution partner, we are offering backup that is essential for your business. So first thing, understanding the importance of the shared responsibility. So the Atlassian Shared Responsibility Model is fundamental to understanding the division of security and compliance responsibilities between you and Atlassian. So as a solution partner, we first know how crucial it is for business to grasp the model thoroughly. So knowing what falls under Atlassian and under your purview is essential here. That way you can protect your business and decisions going forward. In regards to compliance and security, while Atlassian provides a really robust security measure and compliance support, achieving that full compliance with various regulations requires collaboration between you and Atlassian. It's not just meeting the legal requirement, but it's also about protecting your business integrity and your customers' trust. So as a solution partner, we emphasize the importance of working closely with both Atlassian and your internal teams to ensure all the compliance standards are met. In my experience, many organizations just underestimate the importance of having a solid backup strategy. While Atlassian provides the infrastructure, the responsibility to safeguard your data ultimately lies on you. You're choosing a reliable backup provider like ReWind will ensure that your data is secure and is accessible and recoverable in any situation. So, like for example, in our first foray with ReWind, before our first foray, we had been working with a customer who was migrating from data center to cloud. their cloud instance was empty. And when we started working with them, little did we know that when we started working with them, they had another team that had already logged in to the procured brand new site and started creating data in it. So, and the weird thing was the data that they had created was not visible to us because they had put security permissions around it. So the individuals who were doing the the migration did not see that there was data here. So knowing that the only ones that were working in the site, they decided to delete the site because some keys were not, there were keys that were clashing and they didn't realize why. So they deleted the whole backup, the whole site. Now, when we went back to Atlassian to get a backup of what was there, that was going to take 2 or 3 days before we could get that backup, and this team needed to be back where they needed to be. Luckily, they had some data in a, what do you call it, test site that we were able to recover using some tools that we had. And since then, we've always implemented a backup strategy with the customer before we start anything like that, any migration. So what are the benefits for partnering with a solution partner? Well, we have the expertise and experience. So we bring a lot of wealth and knowledge for implementing and optimizing Atlassian tools tailored to your specific needs. We create customized solutions based on what your needs are. So we can help design the backup strategy aligned with your business requirements. Then we can consider factors like data residency, backup frequency, and restoration options. And then ongoing support, where as a partner, it doesn't end with just the implementation. You have to provide continuous support to ensure that your backup strategy remains effective as your business evolves. So when it comes to backup, one size doesn't fit all. So understanding your recovery time, and your recovery point of objective, it's crucial. So these metrics will guide you to determine how quickly you need to recover your data and how much data loss is acceptable. And as a solution partner, we can help analyze these needs and implement a backup solution that minimizes your downtime data. So with that, I'll let the ReWind guys take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Vincent. How's everyone doing? All right. We're going to get a screen share going, make sure that works, get into all about ReWind, but we'll start with some quick introductions on our end. Give me a second here. Should be able to see our screen there. Thanks again for attending. We're super excited as partners of Mumo to just share a little bit about how we address the shared responsibility model. So quickly going to run through who you're talking with first. My name's obviously Ben Barrett. I'm a senior enterprise account executive here at ReWind. And I've been in tech sales my entire career. I started at Salesforce and been at a few startups since. Joined ReWind in January and have just been drinking from the fire hose, learning about things like the shared responsibility model and how we support partners like Atlassian, GitHub, and a bunch of other integrations that we have. I brought on my right-hand man, Dan, who I'll let say hello very quickly.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Dan. I know it says Daniel on the screen. I'll respond to either one. I'm a solutions engineer at ReWind. I've been here just over 2.5 years. I started on the ReWind team on the software engineering side. So I come from a bit of a technical background. I actually got to work on the backup and the restore functionality for things like Confluence, Jira, as well as Bitbucket. So yeah, great to be here and great to meet everyone.
Awesome. Quick disclaimer, we're both Canadians, so if our accents haven't already come out, I'm sure they will. We're not from the Houston area. But yeah, quickly, kind of the backdrop of, why backing up, why SaaS is important in general. There's just been a revolution, right? So when you think about your business, everyone on the call, think about 10 years ago, how many SaaS products that you used. It was probably a handful, right? You could count them on one hand. And then the last 5 years, that grew to a number that you probably couldn't count. But now, just for a mid-sized organization, that's over 130 apps. And that's 2 years ago. So this continues to grow. You're definitely not churning off more products than you're buying, right? And with that, we know that SaaS is not going anywhere. And a ton of your data is stored in the cloud. And there's a very common misconception. If you go ask one of your executives, or even ask yourself if you didn't know about the shared responsibility model, it's in the cloud. My data is secure. That's just a common thing that we hear. We were down at Atlassian team, and the amount of people that came up to our booth and said, why do I need backups, right? Isn't our data backed up? It's in the cloud. Super common misconception. And a lot of people think that that's the case. As we've heard, it's not, right? And it states in whether it's Atlassian, GitHub, any SaaS application, really when you go through the nitty gritty of the terms and the services, you're going to find lines like this. It's not just Atlassian, it's everyone in the SaaS world. They have this responsibility to themselves that they're not going to, treat their thousands and thousands of customers differently because they have an issue. They need to take this on to really have a sustainable business. So we understand where they're coming from, but it's important for businesses to recognize that this is the case. So we heard a bunch of aviation analogies. Love them, by the way, Ken. We have a little bit of a different one here. Think about a condo building. Most people, first place that they might have lived, first place that they rented out was a condo building. So hopefully this hits home with everyone. But really, when you think about a condo building, you're a single tenant in that building, right? And you have a landlord. If something happens that affects all tenants in that building, something like an elevator going down, of course, the landlord's responsible for that. They wouldn't ask their tenants to go try and fix that elevator because it affects everyone. It's business critical for that building to work properly, and they're going to find a solution. So this is for those big data leaks that affect a large majority of customers, or something goes down, they're going to find a remedy. They're going to help back up that data, as Ken described. But if you're throwing a party in your condo, right, and you just bought a nice white leather couch and you have some friends over and you got some red wine out and someone happens to spill that red wine on that white couch, of course, the landlord's not responsible for that. So the comparison there is if you have accidental deletion, someone writes a line of code that disturbs things, malicious attacks that just affect your instance, Atlassian, GitHub, etc., the list goes on, not going to be responsible for that data. And that's really the analogy that we like to use. So if someone comes up to you and says, why do we need to look at ReWind or any sort of backup provider? That's a good analogy that you can use to hopefully convince them why it's important. Use that condo analogy. With that, we're going to just quickly show how we address this. So no pressure to take meeting with us or anything like that. We come at it from an approach that may be different from how your business is doing it. We really just want to kind of show you how we do that. And if you do want to do a personalized demo, I'm just going to share a link in the chat. This is going to go to a meeting directly with me. We'll buy you lunch if you want to take a meeting. Feel free to click the link. It goes to my Calendly. Again, it's 30 minutes. I'll invite Dan and we can show you more of a personalized demo. But really for today, we're just going to give you the high level, how we back up, how we restore data inside of Jira and Confluence. And what you're going to see is this list right here. So we're going to see things like easy SaaS backups. A lot of tools, I think Ken was mentioning, like the servers under the desk, right? We've heard the horror stories of people backing up data on SSD cards. Someone's taking that home every single night or weekly. With ReWind, we don't want you to have to worry about that. There's nothing manual about it. Once you get hooked up, it's going to be automated, fast, and very easy. So you don't have to press a backup now button. It's just going to happen every single night. And every change that you make in Jira or Confluence or Trello or Bitbucket is going to be captured inside the ReWind vault. You have flexible restores, right? So Ken again talked about full disaster recovery and kind of the native solution within a lot of SaaS tools where they'll back up everything and give you a new instance. You can do the item level, the granular restores with ReWind. So if someone does accidentally delete a single issue, right, you're able to bring that back very quickly. very easily, and it's going to be easy to find that because we organize your data for you. So you can say, hey, I'm just looking for issues, and type in the naming convention, and we're going to show you all the different versions of that. It's centrally managed, so you don't have to learn a bunch of new platforms to back up and restore your data. What this basically means is that ReWind doesn't just do Jira, for example. We do Jira, Confluence, I mentioned GitHub, Trello, Bitbucket, Okta's coming, right? We're continuing to build out integrations, and probably the biggest differentiator that we have is that we do go that wide, and then we go deep with a lot of the tools like Atlassian. The effortless compliance piece really just comes down to the fact that, you know, like the table stakes, SSO, all that good stuff, but we're also taking and storing a copy of your data. So we have to take security and compliance very, very seriously. If you do want to learn more, we do have like a trust center, just like Atlassian does. We're going to find all of our different compliance, our SOC 2 reports, our pen test reports. You can really get into the weeds of how we take this so seriously. So if we do have a conversation at a later date, happy to show you this, happy to show you all our accreditations. With that, here's the list of all the different tools that we back up today. Quick story about ReWind. We started almost 10 years ago. We started in the e-commerce world. And then about 5 years ago, we realized how important this was for some of our customers that had e-commerce and then tools like Jira and Confluence. And that's when we dove into the Atlassian world. And ever since that, we really just take customer feedback and build out new integrations as more customers come to us saying, hey, we don't have a solution for this. We'd love to back that up. So that's really where we get the reasoning behind building out and what's to come. We're listening to our customers so we know what to build next, because we want to just build the most business critical SaaS applications, because the shared responsibility model really touches all corners of SaaS. With that, that's all from me. I'm going to kick it over to Dan to share a screen. And again, please ask questions in the chat. Dan and I do not want to just go on monologue. So if there is something you want us to double click on, let us know. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. If I missed something in the chat, feel free to call it out, Anthony, Ben, or whoever notices it first. I'm happy to kind of talk about things as they come up. But we do like to start at the beginning, and that is in the Atlassian Marketplace. Just like to highlight that we are an Atlassian partner, so we can be installed through the Marketplace like you would expect any other app. So all the information of our 3 different Atlassian products. Side note, we also do Trello backups, but separate Marketplace. Everything can be found here. We typically see people get started in less than 10 minutes. So very straightforward to find us. But a little bit more about the functionality. You notice here we are at app.rewind.com. The biggest thing that I want to highlight here is, while you can use ReWind from within the Atlassian market, or the Atlassian tool, so the Jira admin, the Confluence admin, the nature of our product being backups, we want it to be, outside of that world. In case something does happen to Atlassian, the backups are always accessible through an outside portal. So that's the first thing I do like to highlight. And then again, moving more towards functionality, on the left-hand side, I have my list of integrations. So this is everything that you have backed up with ReWind can be accessed here. If I have 3 Confluence accounts, 2 Confluence accounts, 3 Jira, and 1 Bitbucket, those would all be accessed here. And I got timed out for a second. But once I click onto it, this view, which we call the vault, is going to be the most useful when it comes to backups and restores. So starting at the top, we have our typical Jira Cloud instance name, as well as our data residency tag. So ReWind offers 4 data residency locations right now: the United States, Sydney, Australia, London, England, and Frankfurt, Germany. So customers can actually pick where you need your backups. When you do pick that location, ReWind guarantees that the backups do not leave the borders of that country that you selected. So any sort of compliance, regulation, just internal company policies, we want to make sure that you stay in compliance with any one of those. Moving downwards, I can see that the last backup ran last night, and across the screen here, the next backup is scheduled to run tomorrow night. This is telling us that ReWind's running on a completely automated basis every 24 hours. So once you install ReWind, there's nothing that you have to do to intervene to make sure that the backups are running. They run completely automated, and again, at a 24-hour window. The first backup that we take is going to be the biggest, and then those rolling incremental backups are just going to take a snapshot of anything that's changed in the last 24 hours. Now for the interesting part, when it comes to restoring things and actually just finding things to restore, this search bar and these filters are going to be the most important tool. And I'll actually use these filters to show you the different content types that we do backup. Ken had alluded to it at the beginning of his call that the native backup manager serves its purpose, but it kind of comes at an all or nothing backup and restore, whereas ReWind is able to actually pick and choose individual item types to restore. So when you think of Jira, you think of things like projects and issues. So you can actually restore at the issue level. If you just lost like an issue attachment or piece of that issue or the entire issue, you can find that issue and restore it. If you lost data at the project level, you can start there, and then we cascade downwards to restore the different children within that project. So if the project had thousands of issues, those thousands of issues would come back with the project restore. In my case, I'm going to be looking for a particular Jira issue. So I can start typing the name of that issue, and I see that it is the first search result that appears. When I click into the versions, this version selection drop-down menu is really where I think you're going to see the value of this versioning system that we have, is that every time that this issue was changed by one of your users, that nightly backup is going to take a snapshot of that change. And so those versions are accessible going all the way back 365 days. I can go right back to the original version of this issue. And if I need to see some detailed differences between the current version and that selected version, I can click into the source code. And this is really going to highlight the differences. I can even get into things like, what were the different custom fields between the two issues? Those are highlighted here. What were the comments? What was the history, the work log? Everything like that's going to appear here so that you can make the best decision before committing to that restore, clicking yes, and then have that issue reappear in the project from which it was deleted. I'll stop here for a second. I can't see the chat screen. I'll just make sure that there's no questions. Upcoming features and any case studies. Yeah, so I think we're going to touch on those two at the end. So I'll just serve those, save those for later. But anything particular about Jira restores? All good. Perfect. Before I move on to Confluence, the second part of the restore coin that we do like to talk about, although it's good to have that individual restore, there is a time and a use case for entire account restores. And this advanced restore that we're looking at here is just that. So you can think of a world where if you logged in one day and something malicious happened to your account, someone got in and ended up deleting a bunch of projects, what you can do, select the date and time. If that deletion happened on Tuesday, I can pick Monday, adjust my time, click restore, and we'll restore the entire account to look like it did on the date that you selected. So again, we want to give you both sides of the restore coin. That's individual item restores and then account level restores. Question was, is it Jira software only? It's not. This actually includes JSM projects as well as Jira work management projects. It's all under the same subscription. We don't discriminate between those different kinds of projects. They will all get backed up. I'll move into Confluence. And the great thing about this is that it all looks and feels the same. So you notice here, the layout of the page is exactly the same. Other than the logo at the top left, I have the name of my Confluence instance, the data residency tag here. Again, same 4 options are available for data residency. I have the same frequency every 24 hours. That's completely automated. The biggest change between Jira and Confluence is obviously going to be the different item types that we back up. So you can think of, instead of issues and projects, we now have pages and spaces. We do a lot more than that, and we can get very granular with Confluence. So you can do things like page restores, comment restores, attachment restores, and space restores. In this case, I'll pick a particular page, and if I'm looking for something that's called, it has the word handbook in it, I can do this, click into the versions, I can select a version, and once again, restore to it. So the process that you just saw is the same across all of our item types and all of our integrations. So once you've learned how to use ReWind for one SaaS tool, you've learned how to use ReWind for all SaaS tools. And that's really the value that we're trying to convey, is that as you add SaaS platforms, the integration list on the left-hand side here, we want that to get longer and longer. So that the next time you need to back up one of your SaaS tools, you think of ReWind first. We also have, again, the advanced restore tab with the same functionality. So instead of just individual pages or spaces, I can come in here, restore the entire account back to a point in time that I selected. I'll jump back into the comments. Can you do merged restores? For example, old comments were deleted, but there were also some new ones since the mishap. Yes, so that's actually a good example of what we'll call non-destructive restores. So when ReWind is restoring things, if there are things in place that are pre-existing like comments, we won't remove comments that existed between now and the date that you selected. So in that non-destructive sense, we will leave those created comments and then restore the deleted ones around them. That's a philosophy that we stick to across all of our restores. We attempt to do non-destructive restores when possible, and comments are a great example for that. Awesome. I'll jump back into here. Really, the last two things that I want to highlight are the audit log. This is more of a security feature, less functional, but if you need to see a bird's eye view of everything happening in your account, you can see that here. So things when I logged in a few minutes ago, that was all logged here, traced back to my account as well as my IP address. So again, less functional, but if you need to check on the status of different backups, you can see that here, they were completed successfully. All of this can be viewed within the audit log. And then when it comes to managing member permissions, we have functionality here where you can pick granularly at the backup instance level who has access to what. So in my case, if I need Ben to have access to both my Confluence accounts, I can do that by inputting his name and address. If I just need him to have access to one Jira account, I can do that. Or maybe he manages the entire organization, in which case I'll grant him access to both those. So all that can be managed through here. And you can also revoke access if Ben's role changes throughout time. No more questions that I can see. That covers everything functionally that I want to talk about. I do think we have tons of time for questions, so I'll stop sharing right now. If someone needs to see something back in the UI, I can absolutely go back and start sharing that. But I do want to make sure we have enough time for everything to wrap up with Anthony.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great presentation. So there was a couple questions. So as far as any kind of case studies or success stories that you can share?
Yeah, I was going to jump in with one, Anthony, maybe give you a little pump up as well, because you recently did a webinar with our team, and we had the team at Lutron, specifically Jeremy Nahart, the engineering manager over there. And the day of the webinar, it was pretty timely. They actually had some accidental deletions earlier that day, and he went into ReWind and was able to restore that data. With a webinar that day, super busy engineering manager, and didn't lose any time and was able to get back on track. So that's the most recent that I can just think of an example. And we can share the link to that webinar actually right here if you want to just go deeper into safeguarding your data and some specific examples. That's probably a good resource to go to specifically.
Cool. And as far as any additional enhancements around ReWind's backup solutions?
Yep.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about those. A few things we're exploring right now is things like restoring to different instances. So restoring not just to the existing cloud, but if you can think of a business continuity strategy, pushing information from an existing Jira account, if it's no longer accessible, to a new one and continue on your business with that. We're exploring things like data retention policies if people need flexible data retention, more or less, things like that. And another big thing is we've just launched a early access for our Miro backups, and Miro has a pretty tight connection with the Atlassian ecosystem. So not only are we focusing on Atlassian, but if companies that you're working at are also using Miro with Atlassian, then that we can expand that coverage, to move sideways instead of just vertical, deeper into the platform, covering more SaaS apps that play into, the SaaS stack.
So Ken actually has a question for you. He wants to know about FedRAMP and ReWind.
Yeah, it's top of mind. It's not a tomorrow thing. I'm sure, Ken, it's a process. So
A long one.
A long one. So it's something that's on our radar. We have people, we have a dedicated security team that's constantly trying to figure out what our approach would be. Our VP of Cloud is super involved, and so ultimately we do. It's on our radar, but again, you know how long it takes for these kinds of things.
Sure, and then we have one from Vincent. So as far as marketplace partners, are you working with any of the marketplace partners to back up their app data? Because there are some marketplace apps that don't have their data contained within Atlassian. It's outside of that. So any plans on addressing some of those like highly adopted marketplace apps?
Yeah, I mean, our door is always open when we hear things like that's one of the reasons why we built Miro, is that we knew that there was a big crossover between people who were using Jira for the collaboration side and Miro from the architecture diagram side. So when we hear things like that, we want to enhance that coverage to make sure that your entire SaaS stack across that horizontal line is covered. Right now, again, like Ben mentioned, Okta is the next in line. But if there's something specific, Vincent, that you had in mind, we'd love to talk to you about those crucial apps that you do need to see backed up. We'd love to talk to you.
And then another quick question that came in is, so you spoke about third-party apps such as Miro and Okta. So what other apps in the Atlassian space do you back up, or platforms? And then what do you back up outside of Atlassian?
Yeah, so if you think of a world where a typical software company would use Atlassian for Jira, Confluence, we can use the visual. Jira, Confluence for the collaboration stack. Well, there's probably a GitHub or a Bitbucket tied to the code storage. So then those two are covered. You think of the identity provider space, Okta and Microsoft Entra. I think it was called something else before, but now it's called Entra. Those are the two main players that we see there. So you can kind of see the trend that's happening. It's going to go from the collaboration side to what else is used alongside those collaboration tools.
All right, thank you. All right. Just as a note, ReWind is offering a lunch and learn. So if anybody's interested, there's a link that they posted. So lunch on them, so you can learn more and get more into the weeds, and ask any additional questions you have outside of the webinar if you're interested.
Already got one signed up, so that's great. Looking forward to meeting the team there at 4850 Labs. So feel free to use that link. Here's some more resources as well. These can all be found on our website under the resources tab. But happy to jump on with all of you and go through more of a personalized look at how you're using these tools, and then a personalized approach to backing and restoring that up. See one more question come in.
The question, how do we deal with the availability of those backups? So of course, great. As a backup company, I can assure you we take this very seriously. Our backups have backups, right? This is what we live and breathe. We have availability zones. We have rollover zones. So every one of those data residencies I mentioned will have a failover zone when, in case of some disaster striking, like an asteroid hitting an AWS data center. We do have backups of those backups that can roll over into those opposing zones. So you think of US East 1 can roll over to US West 2 or 3, for example. That's true across all of those data residencies that I gave you. The Frankfurt data center can roll up into Sweden. Things like that happen. So if you are interested in like the actual outline of it, that security portal that Ben had posted, which is just security.rewind.com, our SOC 2 report talks a lot about our resiliency. So I'd encourage you, if you're interested more in, black and white writing, check that out. A lot of good stuff in there.
All right, sounds good. We have 2 more installments for this. If you want to register and attend those as well, there'll be some other additional information provided around the shared responsibility model. It'd be great to look forward to. This is the first virtual event for the Houston group in a long while. So we are planning an in-person event sometime in maybe September or October. So we look forward to meeting each of you in person if you're able to attend.